Hi, this is Charles. Um, I've been asked to speak about pure O, or the form of OCD or anxiety disorder that causes people to have aggressive, sexual, or inappropriate thoughts of any kind. Now, obviously, obsessive-compulsive disorder is what it says it is. It's obsessive, it causes compulsions, and it's a disorder. I dislike the term disorder because the term disorder tends to suggest that people are ill. People with anxiety disorder, OCD, phobias, agoraphobia, panic disorder, they're not actually ill. They have a condition which is caused by inappropriate levels of anxiety. So in other words, the anxiety response gets switched on and doesn't get switched off again. It gets reset at a higher level, benchmark level of anxiety. Now, with Pure O, which isn't a form of OCD, by the way, and OCD isn't what you might think it was either. What it is, when people have high levels of anxiety, the brain and body prepare for action in the flight or fight response. And the flight or fight response causes the body to prepare itself physically for either fighting or fleeing a potential threat. So the muscles become primed, the cardiovascular system, the digestive system slows down. All sorts of changes happen that cause all of the symptoms that you'd associate with anxiety and panic. But with what happens in the subconscious mind is the body again is preparing for action. Now the way it does this is to ask lots of risk assessment questions. Now you may have heard this being referred to as what if questions. Now what if questions are questions which look at the most the most outlandish ultimate consequence of the situation you're in. So it searches into the depths of your creativity to try and make a risk assessment about what might happen. Now, under normal situations, for example, if you're driving along in a car and you turn a corner and you're on your own, it's night time, and you turn the corner and you see a car upside down on the road and there are two people strapped into it and smoke coming from it. You jump out of your car and you're immediately in the flight or fight response, which is appropriate because there's obviously a potential danger there to you and to the other people. Now at that point, your body springs into the flight or fight response and starts priming your body for action. So it makes your muscles stronger, it makes you lighter, it does all the things that need to happen in order to make you more efficient at either fighting or fleeing from the potential threat. But your brain starts asking questions. It has to do a risk assessment. And that risk assessment works by saying, what if I do this? What if I do this action and the car blows up? What if I get a stick and break the window and drag the people out? What if there's petrol leaking and it sets fire? Now this is happening at incredible speed in your subconscious, and your subconscious mind has just gone into absolute overload, gathering information from all of through your nervous system, through your senses, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your skin. It's making an assessment of the situation, and all the time all of your sensory organs are feeding back to your subconscious mind so that a sensible decision can be made very, very quickly about what you're going to do. Now, you can see how sensible this is. You can see how, physiologically this makes so much sense. So you get to the point where you've made your risk assessment, you understand the situation, you've assessed the area to see if there's anything that can help you, or whether there's petrol leaking and all those sorts of things, and then you take the most appropriate reaction that your subconscious has made the decision to take. And at this point your physical self comes into action. So if you've decided to pick up a log and break the window and drag the people out, that's what you do, and your adrenaline fuels the strength that you need, the agility you need, the speed, and everything else you need to carry out the decision that your subconscious mind has made. Now then, in anxiety disorder, clearly you have the same level of anxiety all the time. So you have inappropriate levels of anxiety, so inappropriate levels of adrenaline in your blood that are preparing your body for that situation. Now let me explain. If, for example, if I open the door, if we're stood outside a room and I open the door and I push you into the room and there's a lion in there and I close the door behind you and you're in the room with a lion, straight away you go into the flight or fight response, because it's either you kill the lion or you die, or you somehow subdue him. So you have to make a very quick decision. Your adrenaline pumps around your body, your mind starts asking what ifs. What if I fight him? What if he eats me? What if he bites my arm off? What if I pick up this chair and smack him around the head? All of these questions are going on in your subconscious mind to make an appropriate decision about what to do to either kill the lion, pin him down, or to get out of the room, or whatever. But obviously, if I push you into that same room and shut the door behind you, and you're still feeling those senses of anxiety that you did before when the lion was in there, but there's no lion there, there's no real threat, you can understand how your levels of anxiety are inappropriate. So in other words, your anxiety is false anxiety, it's false fear, because you're sitting there now at your computer listening to me. You may or may not be experiencing high levels of anxiety. I'm perfectly calm. An anxiety disorder sufferer could be experiencing the symptoms and the feelings of anxiety coursing around their body, even though they know that there's no potential threat in their environment and nothing's going to happen to them. So, let's go back to the beginning again. You've got a situation where you've jumped out of your car, you can see some people in a car, upside down on the road, you have to make some decisions, your anxiety levels go appropriately high, and you make the correct decisions, and not only that, but you take the right course of action at the time based on those decisions. Alternatively, you're sitting in your room, you're looking at your computer, you know there's no threat around, there isn't a burning car or a tiger or anything else, but you still feel anxiety. Now then, the anxiety that you're feeling now, sat at your computer, is inappropriate anxiety, but it's still having the same physical and psychological manifestations as it would if you were in that situation with the tiger or with the car. So you're sat there, your heart may be racing, your body's becoming primed for action. It could be that your stomach is churning, you've got IBS, you've got sweats, you've got palpitations, you could feel dizzy, you could feel numbness in your face and head, your neck, your shoulders, your left arm might feel heavy. All the things that you associate with anxiety disorder might be happening to you right now, sat in front of your computer. But they're inappropriate things. So, you're in two situations, one's appropriate, one's inappropriate. Now you're sat at home and in your environment, like you were with the car overturned in the road, you're looking around assessing the situation. So your nervous system and your senses were feeding back to you all of the data with which to make those decisions during an appropriate anxiety response. You've still got that anxiety response, but now you're sat at home in front of your computer. But your body is still primed and ready for action. There's still adrenaline in your bloodstream. But the other thing that's happening is that your mind is still looking for those what-ifs. It's still doing a risk assessment, but it's doing a risk assessment based on your environment. It's feeding back from your nervous system the things that you need to know about your environment to make a correct decision about how to react in the situation. But it's a non-threatening situation. You're sat there with your kids, you're sat there with your wife, your husband, you're sat there with relatives, you're at a party, you're at a wedding, but you still feel anxious. And all the time your brain is asking these what-if questions, doing these risk analyses. So what happens with them? Your senses pick up on things that are in your environment. You see the kids, and you get the thought, oh, what if I harm my kids? You see your wife, oh, gosh, imagine if I killed my wife. You're sat with a member of your family, even a male or somebody of the same sex, and you're thinking to yourself, what if I did this sexual thing with them? And you see it in your mind's eye. But you know consciously that you'd never do those things. They're so inappropriate and so against everything you believe. And they disgust you and you don't want to discuss them with anybody. But it's all part of the flight or fight response. They're risk assessment thoughts. That's all they are. Now what do you do about them? Well, clearly what you need to do is reduce your anxiety level. And that's what we do. I'm not trying to sell the Linden method to you. I'd love you to try it because I know it works to do this. But 99% of our clients have these inappropriate thoughts, either constantly, at varying times, or at times of higher stress or higher anxiety or during a panic attack. But without any fail, people have these thoughts. And this is not OCD, because OCD is obsessive-compulsive disorder. These aren't obsessive thoughts. These are inappropriate thoughts based on the flight or fight response. Do you see how that makes sense? Now, I had these thoughts too, so I know about this, and I had them constantly for about 6 years. And I'd be stood next to somebody, a same-sex person, maybe a member of my family, and in my mind's eye I could see myself doing the most grotesque things to them, aggressive things, sexual things, and I was thinking, I must be going mad, this can't be right. That to have these thoughts is just overwhelming. But no, they were completely appropriate to the level of anxiety that I was experiencing. I also had OCD, but that came and went really, and it was more to do with contamination issues. And especially in childhood I had that. So OCD is a different thing. Pure O, as people call this, gives the impression that somehow pure O is related to OCD. It is, in as much as it's fueled by the anxiety and these what-if thoughts, but it's different in as much as that there isn't a compulsion involved. So there's no action, there's no practicing of a physical action. So pure O, as it's called, these inappropriate thoughts, is just a separate symptom of an anxiety condition, of panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. In the same way as agoraphobia is another symptom of a panic or anxiety disorder. Now, OCD, pure O, these inappropriate thoughts, can all be cured by addressing the subconscious anxious habit that fuels them. And what do I mean by subconscious anxious habit? I mean the habit that you've created in your subconscious mind using your absolutely incredible superior creativity, which every anxiety sufferer has, without exception, because without it they're not able to somatize this condition, in other words, think their way into it. But it's their creativity that fuels and builds and retains the anxiety response and the anxiety disorder deep in the subconscious mind, in the part of the brain responsible for the anxiety reaction. And because the anxiety response is stored in that particular way, and because anxiety and fear is the only emotion that is adaptable to your environment, because it has to be, when you move into a dangerous environment, your anxiety levels have to rise. And when you move out of that environment, they have to fall. So if you live in a dangerous country and you move to a non-dangerous country, you adapt to that environment. And the way you adapt is that your sensory organs see that environment, feed it back to your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind says, well, I don't need to be as anxious in this situation. And then your anxiety is suppressed and a new behaviour is formed, a new non-anxious habit. But if you have an anxiety disorder, your anxiety condition, your anxiety levels go up to a higher level, and they fix there. And your thoughts and the environment that you build for yourself as somebody with an anxious habit feeds back to the subconscious brain, and what happens is you develop this anxious habit that is stored and perpetuated in the part of the brain responsible for the anxiety response. Does this all make? I hope this makes sense. I mean, I'm doing this very off the cuff because this has been requested by somebody who brought my attention to the fact that perhaps I ought to just tell you a little bit more about this situation. So what's the solution? It is to undermine and remove the subconscious anxious reaction that fuels and perpetuates the anxiety at its core. And there's only one way to do that, and that's through structure, support, guidance, and through relevant structured support and guidance. Support and guidance provided by people who know exactly what to do to teach you how to create an environment for change that will undermine and remove your anxiety disorder forever. It's the only way to do it. There is no drug that reaches this part of the brain. There may be a drug that reaches that part of the brain, but that can't selectively select the neural pathways of learning that are responsible for this habit, this behaviour. There's just nothing that can do that. It would be difficult to do through surgery, let alone anything else. In fact, you'd destroy so many other brain cells with medication or surgery that could address this area of the brain that it just wouldn't be worth doing. There is no medication that can reprogram the specific neural pathways that you need to reach in order to overcome and eliminate your anxiety disorder completely. It's impossible. So medication can't do this. And the only way to do it is to talk to people that have done it. And those people are the people that we have helped over the 12 years that we've been doing this. And myself, I've done it myself, and I know how to do this. And my staff are trained in building the environment for change that you need to overcome this completely, very, very quickly. Very quickly. And in fact, those thoughts stopped in me within 2 days of starting this structure. Within 2 days, my panic attacks stopped, my derealization and depersonalization stopped, and these pure O thoughts stopped. They stopped completely. They went away. My anxiety took a little bit longer, and it died down over maybe a few weeks really, until it was completely gone. But it was completely gone because I no longer had that subconscious anxious habit fueling the thoughts, fueling my disorder, and the thoughts went completely. I hope this explains what I'm trying to get across to you, and I hope it makes complete sense because, 115,000 people helped so far, and by the time you watch this video, it'll be more people. Look on our YouTube site, Facebook site, look on panicandanxiety.com at the comments we get from our clients, look at the videos, testimonials. You'll soon see that there's nothing else that touches this solution, nothing else in the world, and You know, we know this works, and I know this works. And if you don't try it, you're not doing the thing that absolutely every recovered anxiety sufferer has done to get completely well. We can provide the structure, the support, the ongoing support, and the material, the advice, and the experience to get you well. And hopefully you'll take us up on this. So I hope this has all made sense to you. If anybody wants me to do anything else, explain any element of this in more detail, or to do any other videos, please contact me through Facebook, YouTube, through the sites, through stopworry.com. But take a look at panicandanxiety.com, because it's slowly becoming a resource for videos like this one and information that will help you guys to understand that what we do at the Linden Centre really does work. Anyway, I'll say goodbye. I've waffled on enough, and I hope you've enjoyed or found something useful in this video. Take care.